Something's missing. Do you know our show without the theme music? Can you hear Cannonball Rag playing even though it's not there? Does that song instantly trigger, hey, Kentucky Afield's on? But what if there were no music? Is it still the same show? Are you still you? Am I still me? Does the mood change? How do we just make do when something so ingrained is gone? This is Charlie Baglan, and we go inside outdoors by going inside the life of someone who is also gone. Her name is Laurie Davison, and until the day she died on her beach vacation in the summer of 2015, she was someone who was a friend to me, a friend to many, a friend to this show, and I needed somebody who could go beyond the black and white of the wild outdoors, go beyond the green. She was a part of the show on many special occasions. She was also part of countless lives of kids and families who always left her presence feeling happier and feeling more completely welcome and connected to nature. We will laugh and cry and wonder why. Next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
Motorists should be advised that wild elk have been seen in the Frankfort area. These animals are twice the size of deer, weighing more than 1,000 pounds each. But don't worry, you won't see them on the roads or in the woods. You're encouraged to get a closer look by bringing your family and friends and your sense of adventure to the Salato Wildlife Education Center in Frankfort. Elk are one more example of the incredible native wildlife that shares Kentucky with us. Salato, reconnecting people and nature for life.
You know our patch. But there are some things about the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife you may have never dreamed. Like 150,000 acres of wilderness we own for public enjoyment, leading the way in land conservation. From the majestic elk to the short-tailed shrew, healthy habitat helps them all. Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, your partner in the great outdoors. And you thought we were just fishing and hunting. Hunt more at fw.ky.gov.
My name is Mark, and I worked with Laurie. I think my fondest memory is that she was always smiling. You know, even in the most stressful of situations, she managed to maintain a smile throughout it.
Animal attraction. We get to the heart of the matter next on Kentucky Afield Radio. In spring, a young man's fancy turns to love. So to attract that certain someone, that leads a young man to turn first to his wit and charm. Then we zero in a little more with our good looks, sultry style, and other attributes. Cupid isn't stupid. To hit the mark, we must accentuate the positive. Needless to say whether you're pursuing or the one pursued. Selecting a mate exposes the animal instincts in us all.
There's different body language that women use around men and that men use around women, and you find the same types of things happening in the animal kingdom.
Laurie Davison with the Salato Wildlife Education Center in Frankfort knows a thing or two about animal magnetism. For animals, she says, looks do matter. So do scent, sound, and other critter courtship rituals. Examples include the stagnant stench we smell in late winter. That's a sign that skunks are in love.
Skunks typically use their scent when they are mortally threatened, but they also use it during the mating season, both to advertise territory and as an attractant to other skunks. You know, this is Chanel number 5 as far as skunks are concerned.
The antlers of a deer, the fantail feathers of a turkey or peacock, they all play into helping a female select the male that will be a suitable father for her offspring. The human male may display a shiny car and whistles. Now that's not such a bird-brained idea.
Showing off, saying, here I am, notice me. Songbirds are great at this. The male songbirds are the most brilliantly colored birds you'll have, whereas the females really aren't very colorful at all. It's because the males are the ones that are really exerting a lot of energy into showing off and getting the females to notice them.
Crickets sing and cicadas sing, and this is a group of insects that uses light.
Entomologist Dr. David Gordon. He says that lightning bugs are a glowing example that love is alive in the insect world as well.
And what they're doing is the males are making these signals to attract the females, and the females are in the grass or in the vegetation on the ground, and when they see these flashes, they flash back. And so there's a code, like passwords, and this helps that they meet the female from the right species.
Mating isn't random. Even wild animals have to put up with a little rejection, because, just like you and me, they're looking for the perfect partner.
This is a very critical behavior for survival. You want to make sure that you manage to reproduce yourself. But at the same time, you can never forget your place in the food chain. And so these animals have to constantly be aware of other animals that are potentially going to eat them. Animals in general will only mate during a time that when they give birth, their young are going to survive. So they're not going to want to give birth to young when it's extremely cold outside, or when there's a dry season and there's not very much food, or when there are lots and lots of predators around.
Humans have no set breeding season, though most people think of spring as when animals breed. However, great horned owls prefer the cold of winter. Snakes and turtles, the heat of midsummer. Deer and elk seek their mates in fall. But whenever it occurs, there is no feeling to rival falling in love. Our pulse quickens. We jump for joy, just as if we were rabbits.
Rabbits have a wonderful behavior. You have a female rabbit that when she's ready to mate will charge a male. There will be charging back and forth, leaping up into the air. The female will stand up on her hind legs and box towards the male's face. Doesn't usually make contact. It's more of a show. It's just a ritual.
And speaking of a show, if you're a male praying mantis, then pray for your life. After mating, the female will eat the male nearly a third of the time. While this wildlife version of fatal attraction is rare, generally, if it's a ploy we use as people, it's also at work in the wild. The mating game transcends time, species, and gender, and has left us with one conclusion. Roses are red, violets are blue. Love is a crazy, amazing, puzzling, and scientific thing. It doesn't rhyme, but it's still true.
This is Charlie Baglan. Welcome back to Kentucky Afield Radio. Our Animal Instincts is that program we just heard. It was a shining example of how people and wildlife are more connected than we may care to admit. I guess there's a reason we call people pussycats and say they're as sly as a fox. The piece we just heard was called The Mating Game. So the Kentucky Afield Radio Valentine's Day special was back in 2003, and the woman sitting across the desk from me in the story was sort of a newcomer to Kentucky at the time. And she had two gifts, a love of nature and the ability to translate its complexities into English. Her name is Laurie Davison. She was the director of the Salato Wildlife Education Center in Frankfort, a zoo of sorts for Kentucky animals. Bears, elk, bison, fish. A family favorite and a school field trip that no kid ever wanted to skip. Today, we'll spend the hour remembering Laurie, her wit and her wisdom, and some of the many times she appeared on Kentucky Afield Radio. We will talk with those who knew her, and we'll talk with those who may never ever be ready to talk about her in the past tense. You know, we expect the aged to die, someone once told me. And when they do, it still comes as a surprise. But how about the young? The sorrow is compounded so much when you lose someone in their youth, in the peak of their health. Saying goodbye to them, it just hurts in ways we can't describe. Since Laurie passed away back in the summer of 2015, I can hardly turn on the news. I guess I'm just more sensitive to it, without noticing tragic, untimely deaths. Silly, senseless. The death of a soldier, police officer lost in the line of duty, kids. The list, it never ends. Sports injuries. So what makes this death any different? Well, nothing, I suppose. Same heartache, very similar denial, anger, realizing that there is no second chance. Working through grief takes time. Funerals are never something we look forward to. Here's something you may have noticed about a funeral. They start out as sorrowful and full of bereavement, and they suddenly become cloaked in a celebration. And you realize that it's not just your life that feels the pain. It's not just your life that life touched. And we often feel that because we're youthful, because we have such vitality, that it's not going to happen to us. And we're going to live forever. I remember on the school playground as a kid, I'm invincible. We are indestructible. We are optimistic. Laurie Davison was optimistic. 15 years at the helm of Salato. She was happily is not a good word. She was gleefully married. She had 2 rambunctious kids, a job where she was respected. And as we tell Laurie's story, we may be also able to tell part of yours, because I'm sure that this show is going to bring about some fond recollections of someone in your life who, by all accounts, should still be here. The memories and recollections will be quietly similar. And if I forgot to tell you, this edition of Kentucky Afield Radio is about remembrances. And if you didn't know Laurie, you will. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglan, and I'm not sure which is scarier, the wicked creatures of Halloween or my 2 guests. They are wildlife biologist Laurie Davison, who is in charge of the Salato Wildlife Education Center, and noted amphibian and reptile expert John McGregor. We are here to talk about the fact and the fiction of wildlife at Halloween. Now, I have a black and white cat, and I can see how some people might think he's evil.
I have a friend who had a calico that is hands down the most terrifying animal I've ever met in my life.
There's something about a cat, and I don't know where does that come from, folklore or where?
Oh, yeah. There's a couple of different things about cats. Cats have been known since the Dark Ages, I believe, as familiars of witches, and that got its start with single older women because they hung to themselves and stuff like that. They were determined by the public to be creepy or evil in some way, and they had to relate the cat some way to that as well, I suppose. So they decided that Satan had given her a cat, and this was her way of communicating with Satan. So that's one. Another thing is during the Black Plague, there's a strong cat link to the bubonic plague that is interesting, and they considered, because everybody was dying right and left of this plague, witchcraft was, of course, one of the things brought up as a possible reason, and everybody went on a cat-killing spree. The nice thing for dark-colored cats, though, was that in these pre-industrial cities that were dark and dingy, the dark-colored cats got to hide out, and the white ones got killed out really quickly. But I do think that dark cats, for a variety of reasons, have always been associated with evil.
This Halloween show has become a fixture on the show each fall, featuring the lady of the hour, the late Laurie Davison. The Salato Wildlife Education Center, of course, still open for business. In the studio with me is a fellow named Brent McCarty. Brent has been a mainstay with the Salato Center for a number of years, and Brent, the reins now have pretty much fallen into your hands.
Yes. Yes.
What's the temperament? What's the mood?
Obviously, when someone that's such an important part of your life dies so unexpectedly, it's not going to be easy for anybody. So it hit us all pretty hard. As much as we all miss Laurie, losing her in such a traumatic way has forced us to solidify as a team. Even though we were already a pretty good team, we've really solidified as a team when we lost her. And I wish she could be around to see the teamwork we're putting in together to make our new baby Bobcat a big success at Salato. She was a cat person. I'm a dog person. And so Laurie would love to see this new Bobcat on display, but more so than that, see the teamwork that her loss has inspired.
It was you that I called to talk to first when I first heard this, because I knew that you would have the answers to the questions. And one thing I asked was, how did this happen? and you said riptide.
If you try to swim against the rip current, you'll lose. Doesn't matter how good a swimmer you are, you'll lose that battle. Personal flotation devices probably help.
The life jacket would have been wonderful, but how many people go to the ocean wearing a life jacket?
I don't.
Riptides, you say, Brent. That got me curious. We love to travel. I know I saw pictures of you recently on Facebook where you had been in Florida. I used to live and work in Myrtle Beach, have been on those sands too many times to count. U.S. News and World Report had a listing of the top 12 family vacation destinations. Number 1, Honolulu. That's a beach. Next down is Yellowstone, Yosemite, Washington, D.C. Grand Canyon, no beaches there. But number 6, Disney World. Now, that's in Orlando, but not far from the ocean. Kind of hate to waste a trip to Florida and not at least hit a beach someplace. San Diego's a beach. Myrtle Beach comes in at 8. Disneyland, San Francisco, Williamsburg, Virginia. Not far from Virginia Beach at all. And in number 12, Ocean City, Maryland. So there you go. Half of the top 12 family vacation destinations include an ocean. Water attracts us. We absolutely love it, and so did Laurie. Now, if you're heading to the beach, here's some things you may want to know before you go. We always talked about water safety on this show. Never talked about riptides. On the telephone with me is a fellow named Gene Hudson. He is the president and CEO of Myrtle Beach Lifeguards. And, Gene, welcome to the show. But I want to tell you, I used to live and work in Myrtle Beach at the finest radio station on the Grand Strand, WYAV Wave 104.1.
Oh, 104, yes, absolutely.
This is 1986. Let me ask you about riptides or rip currents. Is that, which one is correct, riptide or current or both?
Both. For example, the high tide comes in, and sometimes there's a berm out there on the beach, and sometimes it's a real high tide, and it goes over the berm, and you got water collecting on the land side of that berm, and then the water runs down the beach to a low spot, and then it goes back out in the ocean. It goes rushing out in the ocean. That could be a rip current right there, because, you got all this water on the west side of the berm going down to the low spot, and all of a sudden it goes back out in the ocean, and you can usually spot that by the color of the water. Usually it's sandy or kind of a dirty looking, and as all this water goes back out in the ocean, they've still got waves coming in, then they meet each other and it gets a little choppy right there, and that's a rip current right there. You can't always see the rip currents forming like the one I just told you.
So as I understand it, it's sort of like a stream. I don't know how many feet wide, 20, 30 feet wide, and it's going out to sea. You can't really tell it until you get in it, and then it sort of sweeps you out to sea, as I understand it.
Yeah, you get caught up in it, and it sweeps you out to sea, and most people, the major cause of drowning is panic. Most people panic when they get caught in a rip current, and they like to wade out there about chest deep, and the waves will come, and they'll have to ride up over the wave, and then all of a sudden they get caught up in a rip current, and boom, they're over their head out there, and they panic, and that's when you need a lifeguard.
How far out will it take you when you say out to sea?
20, 30, 40 yards as it dissipates, as it gets further out in the ocean. That little stream gets wider as you go out, and it sort of dissipates. And so that's the reason that you need to swim north or south. You can swim sideways to get out of that rip current, and then you can come in. It's almost impossible to swim against that rip current that's going out, and you're trying to come in, particularly if you're a weak swimmer.
If I find myself in a riptide and it's carrying me out to sea, about how long am I going to be involved in this and having to swim my way back in? I'll be out there 10 minutes or maybe a half hour. What do you think?
Less than 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes.
Okay.
Because it moves pretty fast. It'll take you out, and then it'll dissipate. You find out that it's not pulling you. When you get out to sea, you find out it's not pulling you like it was. You can just kind of float on out with it till you get further out. And then when you find out it's not moving, like the water's not moving like it was at one time, then you can swim left or swim right and up or down the beach and eventually come in by yourself without a lifeguard. But panic is the number one cause of death, swimmer's death, is panic.
So you find yourself 40 yards out into the sea. Then what? How do you get back in safely?
You swim left or you swim right. You just get out of that current, and then you can come in. But, that's where a lifeguard is handy to have around because they know all this stuff. And when they go out, they carry their rescue can with them. They hand the rescue can to the victim. It's a flotation device. It'll hold the victim up out of the water, and he just swims out of the current and then brings him in,
Does this happen routinely? How often does it happen?
Well, not very often. 2 or 3 times a week they'll go in the water,
Do riptides always mean drowning?
Well, we call them killer rip currents is what we call them. So they're pretty serious, and you get caught in one of those things, and most people panic. They're real serious. That's the reason we call them killer rip currents. They are serious, and it's serious business.
Can you speak for other beaches? Is this common, say, in Florida or along the Gulf Coast, Hawaii?
Oh, yeah. They're common everywhere, and you can talk to those lifeguards in Florida, and they'll tell you the same thing.
What about on major lakes, even inland lakes?
Say you got a small stream going into a river, and where that stream enters into the river, you got a strong current. And, of course, that's a rip current because you got a current from the stream, which is small, going into the larger river, and it just rips through the water in the river, which is pretty calm. And so you got a rip current there, and sometimes it kicks up muddy water, and you can actually see it.
Gene, I got to get moving, but thanks a million for the advice, and keep Myrtle Beach safe.
But, hey, call me anytime.
Gene Hudson, the Chief Executive Officer with Myrtle Beach Lifeguards. We need to get to a break. Our show is in tribute to nature educator, mother, friend, backpacker, plant lover, and 15-year director of the Salato Wildlife Education Center, Laurie Davison. Stay with us. My name is Charlie Baglan. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. Charlie Baglan back on Kentucky Afield Radio. And if you're from Madisonville, maybe Benton, Pikeville, Paducah, if you're out and about in the state, I understand chances are you have never visited Salato. But they have had school buses in the parking lot from all over, worth the drive. So it could be you know exactly what I'm talking about and not just listening to this program in the third person, you might say. If you'd like to hear it again, or if you would like to share it on Facebook, or maybe email a family member the link to hear the show again, it's fairly easy to do. You can find us several different places. On Facebook, we're at Kentucky Afield Radio. To search for that in the search box. Also, we are an iTunes podcast. Find us on myhuntingandfishing.com. And also on YouTube. Put Kentucky Afield Radio in the search box, and there we are. Back with more about the lessons of the lovely Laurie. First up, our fishing report.
This is Tom with your fishing report from the Northeast. Cavern Lake is in the low 70s and is sitting a couple feet below summer pool levels. Muskie have been up and shallow, and anglers have been searching for them in the backs of coves. Remember, there are very few weeds this time of the year, so look for timber and try fishing around some of the brush piles and fish attractors. Over on Grayson Lake, hybrids are hitting the crankbaits in the creeks. A good place to try would be the Bruin area. And crappie are also good on the main lake around trees with minnows. In the green-up pool of the Ohio River, bass are moving into the creeks and can be caught at the mouths and on the flats on topwater baits. Trout were stocked in the Middle Fork of Red River, East Fork of Indian Creek, and Swift Camp Creek this past week. Remember the delayed harvest regulation on these gorge streams this time of the year? But if you're looking to keep a mess of trout, we will be stocking Craney Creek in Round County next week. That should do it for us. Wherever you go, good luck and stay safe.
This is Jeff Crosby with the Central District Fishing Report. Largemouth bass are moving into fall patterns. Many of these bass can be found in creek arms, chasing shad, crankbaits, rattle traps, or red-eye shad are popular baits when fished around shoreline cover. Additionally, at Taylorsville, catches of crappie have been increasing. Standing timber or brush piles adjacent to deep water in 6 to 12 foot of water are very productive. Live minnows and crappie jigs have been the best bait for catching these crappie. Also, this time of year, fishermen are experiencing good success at many of our small lakes, such as Beaver, Bolt, Selmer, and McNeely Lakes, catching bluegill and shellcracker. So grab a pole, wet a line, and enjoy some great fishing. Hope to see you on the water.
Hi, this is John Williams with Fishing Report for Southeast Kentucky. At Lake Cumberland, striper fishermen report that some stripers are still being caught deep, either 60, 70 feet or even down to 100 feet on live bait if you can find it, or also some striper jigs trolled in that area. Expect most of those fish to move shallow in the coming weeks on the main lake in the next few weeks. Also around the district at Laurel, a few walleye being picked up by trolling crankbaits at night or early morning, and a few being picked up on night crawler rigs, trolled 20 to 30 feet on shallow humps or main lake shorelines. Also in the district, trout have been stocked in Rock Creek, Cane Creek, Bark Camp, War Fork. Rock Creek, Cane, and Bark Camp all have a seasonal catch and release regulation that went into effect October 1st, and it's no harvest, artificial baits only. So as always, good luck, and get out and enjoy the fall weather.
My fun budget this summer is $10 a day.
Ooh, big spender.
Then it hit me.
Uh-oh.
Include the family. This summer, we all have different roads we want to travel.
Ooh, travel.
And we're putting fishing on that list, too. And it turns out, I over-budgeted. A Kentucky fishing license costs about $0.05 a day. And kids are free.
I married a saver.
You married a keeper. This summer, catch some family fun. Google Kentucky Fishing to learn more.
My name is Beth Mitch, and I'm with the Kentucky Becoming an Outdoors Woman program. Backpacking, winter survival, outdoor cooking, canoeing, hiking, you name it, Laurie was ready to instruct on it, including teaching individuals all about possums in Kentucky. Hope that people will be encouraged to go and visit the center and help Laurie's memory live on of wanting people to be involved in the outdoors.
We are back in our second half hour. My name is Charlie Baglan, and this is Kentucky Afield Radio. And our show today celebrates wildlife education. We play a piece from the archive Laurie Davison helped us with back in 2013, The Wildlife and Folklife of Christmas.
Even though I grew up in South Carolina, my parents are Yankees, so we've got a mix of stuff that my family did, but our neighbors growing up had very distinct Southern traditions. Like one of the meals that would show up at the feast pretty regularly was shrimp and grits. So
shrimp and grits.
Not what you think of as your traditional Christmas feast, but it's awful good.
Well, I know this one thing about northern South Carolina, what they call the upstate.
Yes.
Not much snow there.
No.
Get a little bit of snow in Kentucky, not always on Christmas, unfortunately.
No, but it's one of the reasons I moved to Kentucky. I wanted more snow.
Christmas certainly has nature involved in it, and this is Kentucky Afield Radio. So we should look at the nature that we use as we celebrate Christmas in Kentucky. And we can begin with the Christmas tree. What native Christmas trees are there growing in Kentucky? Laurie, do you know?
The red cedar or juniper, which is what we usually used in my family. We'd go out and cut a cedar tree. There are people that use pine trees as well. We've got Virginia pines and white pines, although they're not great at holding ornaments.
Pitch pine. There's also pitch pine in this state.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you heard of hemlock trees being used as a Christmas tree?
I have heard of that, which is kind of cool, because they look a lot like a fir tree, and I would imagine they're just as good as a fir to hold ornaments, I've never actually used one.
The idea of lights on a Christmas tree, where'd that come from? And the story I heard was, if you go outside at night on a clear night, you can look through the branches and the pine needles, and you can see the stars, and that sort of mimics what a Christmas tree light is. That at all close to the truth that either one of you know?
The one I've heard has to do with St. Lucia, and they used to have parades. This was just previous to Christmas, was St. Lucia Day.
That's right.
And her name, actually, the root of her name is Light, Lux.
That's right.
And they would have parades, and people would carry torches, and they would declare a woman in the village or the town to be St. Lucia for the day, and they would do this parade she'd be surrounded by people carrying torches and light. So that, to me, is a possible link to the Christmas lights.
We will repeat that show in its entirety, I'm sure, this coming Christmas. A look back at some of the memorable moments with a leader in wildlife education. It is done in the name of Lexington, Kentucky's Laurie Davison. And true, she died, but had she lived, this show would still be worth doing. If you had visited the Salato Center, I'm sure you crossed her path. And while it's called an education center, Laurie had a different take on that. Let's call it catching on, getting the picture, having an eye-opening experience. Sounds funner than being educated. Ben Franklin had a theory that Laurie and the great folks at Salato follow. Says, tell me something, I'll probably forget it. If you teach me, I might remember. But if you involve me, then I'll learn. See it, hear it, smell it, taste it, hold it, touch it. Who was with you that first time you touched a woolly worm? How old were you when you baited your first hook? Who taught you about the life cycle of a butterfly, or why spiders make webs and why those webs are so sticky? You know, the best teachers out there are those who simply take the time. Mom, Dad, Granddad, Scouts, 4-H, maybe you spent time at summer conservation camp. You never stop learning because life never stops teaching. Laurie Davison was in charge of the Salato Wildlife Education Center for 15 years. And for about 40 of those 15 years, she spent saying, hey, I've got an idea. Maybe you can help me with this. Tell me what you think. She would get you involved. You know, the forest behind the Salato Wildlife Center now has a new name and a renewed purpose. As of August 14th of 2015, that 100-acre area is named Davison Woods. It's a peaceful, quiet area to ponder and wander and remind yourself how good you've got it. And it's those trails that Laurie knew best.
Visitors at Salato can take advantage of two trail systems. One is the Habitrek Trail. If you hike the entire Habitrek Trail, it's an easy 1-mile hike. It has a sinkhole. It has a short trail that goes through a new prairie that we've planted, and in the summer this prairie is full of wildflowers. It's predominantly wooded, and you can see examples of old fence rows that have since fallen down. We have a number of ephemeral streams which only hold water when it's been raining really heavily or if there's been snowmelt. The longer 3-mile Pea Ridge Loop Trail opens off of the Habitrek Trail. This is a much more strenuous trail. If you're hiking this one, you should take water and good shoes, and definitely pick up a map at the Salato Center before you leave. And like hiking anywhere, make sure that a friend knows where you're going and when you expect to return for safety's sake.
Brett McCarty, you were there. It was a touching day.
The hiking trails, to me, kind of embody Laurie's mission in life, and that was to make sure that anyone had easy access, or relatively easy access to nature, and not just your typical groups who are already out there hunting and hiking and fishing and camping, but she wanted to make sure that no matter who you were, what your background was, what your ethnicity was, no matter what handicap you may have, you had the opportunity to get out and appreciate and love nature the way she did.
Let's go back to that day. Let me introduce Greg Johnson, the commissioner for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife.
You know, a tragic moment 6 weeks ago claimed someone very dear to all of us, a valued and loved member of our fish and wildlife family. Today, we honor, in a small but lasting way, some of our deaths of Laurie Davison. She understood clearly that when hunters pay to acquire and preserve habitats for deer and turkey and rabbits and quail, that songbirds, hawks, bats, and other non-hunted species thrive in those same acres. And she knew that when anglers pay to manage rivers, streams, ponds, and lakes for bluegill and catfish, that darters, salamanders, snakes, frogs, turtles, and snails flourish also. She knew that everything we love begins with clean water and healthy ecosystems. And not only was she able to explain these often complex cycle of life circumstances in ways we could easily grasp, she loved doing it. Laurie joined our Fish and Wildlife family in the May of 2000 and she began managing the Salato Wildlife Education Center when it was still in its infancy, and was largely responsible for growing it into what it is today. What you see around here today is largely her vision over the past 15 years. But possibly she loved the woods the most. When a local fish and wildlife benefactor donated these 100 woodland acres about 10 years ago, Laurie quickly developed nature trails and hiking trails. She insisted that they be ADA compliant, inviting and inclusive and accessible to everyone. Laurie championed outdoor education, and a walk through the woodlands was the most interactive of all the center's exhibits and events that she initiated. Events like Halloween's Walk with the Animals, Bike-a-thon stopovers, spring flower walks, nighttime walks to listen to the owls. Davison Woods will forever be a part of Laurie's legacy. These woodlands and trails, with their wildlife and wild places Laurie loved, will be hosting spring flower walks and nighttime listen to the owl outings long into the future. Laurie planted trees that will someday provide shade under which she knew she would never sit, the true meaning of life. She gave fruits and flowers and shades to others. Davison Woods carries on that passion for making the wild things and wild places she loved inviting and available and accessible to everyone. We miss Laurie, maybe because of what we do here today. Children yet unborn, who are our future, will experience and benefit from Laurie's beautiful legacy. May God bless Laurie as she blessed all of us.
I was there. I'm happy to see these woods share her name. You know, we see names everywhere we look. Street signs, buildings, libraries. Do we really know who these individuals are? Sure, we probably know who Rupp is on Rupp Arena, but who's Henry Watterson, Watterson Expressway in Louisville? Were you actually pals with Peabody of Peabody Coal Company, Peabody Wildlife Management Area? Lake Barkley, who is Alban Barkley? Do you remember? The people are gone, but their names live on. Back at Salato, who is Jim Salato? Who is Lauren Schaaf? And who is this Davison of Davison Woods? Who are they in the grand scheme? Tim Sloan was there. We asked him.
I think 20, 30, 50 years from now, people will be so grateful that this big green space exists, that this 100-acre woods, that somebody had the foresight to protect that woods. And the longer this wood is there, the more people will appreciate it as development grows around it. So I think significance will do nothing but increase.
Well, I hope you're right. You know, one thing we can learn about trails is a bend in the road doesn't mean the end of the road. Back with our final few, talking about the life and lessons of Kentucky's Laurie Davison. When we return, my name is Charlie Baglan, and you're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglan, and welcome back. We have our final few minutes in the good name of outdoor education, and a dear lady who was central to the effort at the Salato Wildlife Education Center, that in the capital city. Laurie Davison was a sprite, 52 years old. She died unexpectedly in her Myrtle Beach vacation, and friends say it was a time in her life they had never seen her happier. Twins underfoot, a loving spouse. For Laurie Ann, life had purpose. Laurie's partner is on the phone with me now. Mary, you and the kids were at the dedication. I saw you, but as months go past, does it make it any easier? How are you? How are the kids?
It's very difficult for the children, but they're working hard and talking about her and processing it, and I think they have been very strong and brave and will continue to be.
I don't know if youth in any way softens the impact, but what do we take from this?
I don't know what there is to take from her death, but I know there's a lot to take from her life. She was the most curious person I've ever known, the most engaged person, the most respectful person, and if we take any of those things away, whether it's her curiosity, her respect, her tenaciousness for justice, those are the things to take from this, take from her life, not from her death.
It is a very difficult thing to put into words. A lot of people, though, have tried. They have memories they've wanted to share, visitors, friends, colleagues, volunteers, people who learned from her.
One thing she really instilled in me was to look at things from a different point of view. She really helped me broaden my horizons in thinking that how can we do the same project from a different angle and incorporate more.
So Laurie was hired when you were the commissioner, Tom. You must have seen something early on.
I remember the very first day I talked with her when she interviewed. I asked her what she knew about fish and wildlife. She told me about how she'd relate those people to what I've done all my life, and that is to hunting and fishing. And I thought that was the interesting part of it, was that she was trying to make me understand what I've been doing all my life. That sort of attracted me to her, and that's the reason she got hired.
My name is Jennifer Noren, and I have been a volunteer at Salato Wildlife Center since 2009. Laurie has always been an inspiration to me. When my husband started volunteering there, he enjoyed it so much we got married there 3 years ago, and Laurie helped put that together. She was always kind. She was usually always dirty because she'd been working around Salato. I remember she was putting sod in the wildlife habitat, and she was covered in mud and just smiling because she was so happy. She was sweaty and gross and thirsty, but she was so pleased that she was doing something to make Salato better.
This is Ren Smith, Bernheim Arboretum. I remember one particular time she came out to Bernheim dressed in a homemade skunk outfit. I remember her telling us all these wonderful, engaging facts about striped skunks, and before long, she pushed the button, and we were all dancing around, stomping our feet, and she, of course, was waving her tail and looking over her shoulder at us, and we were just all dancing about. She was just this incredibly generous spirit and such a bright, bright light.
Sounds like Laurie will live on in many ways.
In many ways.
Will you name the bobcat Laurie? Under your breath, you'll be calling that cat Laurie.
Yeah, we don't name animals at Salato, but that would be one exception. Would be a good a bobcat name, Little Laurie.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I've known Laurie for 20 years. Her catchphrase was always, "Oh, cool. Tell me more." And that's Laurie. And I can't imagine the world without her.
We volunteered at the Salato Sampler this year, and we were taking a group picture, and we were all tired and wanted to go home. And she wanted to get home to her family, but she slung her arm around my shoulder and just smiled. We took a great picture, and that was the last time I saw Laurie. And I am just so grateful. I can't think of anything negative to say about her. She was an amazing individual.
Hi, this is Ika Stasiak, wildlife veterinarian with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. One time she called me and asked me if I had any ear tendons. She was planning to use them to show visitors how Native Americans had used sinew to fashion bowstrings. And I'm not really sure how many hours she had spent drying and weaving the material, probably many, many hours. I've never known anyone else to be so excited about deer tendons, but it really did speak to her passion for conservation and education. It is one thing to have passion, but something else entirely to be able to share that with others, and that is a very rare gift.
Memories can last forever, some for just one day. Some memories are meant to treasure. Memories will say there's a reason that they linger forward, long since we have grown to lead you by the hand home. A friend is still a friend tomorrow if the heart can't find its way. Along the path a mask may follow to lead happiness astray. There's no searching They lead you by the hand, lead you by the hand, lead you by the hand home.
She told me once it just wouldn't be a picnic without ants. But I can see her gathered at a picnic table somewhere with other nature educators who have left us all too soon. Dave Mirr, Tom Barnes, some others. Wondering, did she do enough? Well, for every little boy and girl who hurries into the Salato Center, presses their nose to the glass of the fish aquarium, oohs and ahs at the wildcat, giggles at the big black bear, climbs into a bobwhite quail egg, sees a bald eagle, I think Laurie will be watching, and knowing amid the fun, they will learn. For Laurie and for Lauries everywhere who have touched our lives, we know there's a special place waiting. May crickets, frogs, owls, bugling elk, and songbirds all sing them a hero's welcome. We are out of time. This is Charlie Baglan inviting you to join us in a week, and we will go inside outdoors again, here on Kentucky Afield Radio.